Hey everybody, it's Rockula, and welcome back to Rockula Retrospective. And this is a brand new segment that I'm starting called the ZAPPAPHILE. And I wrote this big long introduction about Frank Zappa, and it chronicled all of his accomplishments, but that's not really necessary right now. What you really need to know about Zappa are three things. The first thing is that he is one of the first major examples of an independent artist. He took control of his own music, he financed his own record label, he made movies, videos, all kinds of business deals that we don't even know about in the public eye. He did all of that stuff on his own. Two, he completely ignored any kind of rules or genre specifications that went with any kind of music that he played. He would just take music and chop it up, put it next to each other, and just hop from genre to genre, not just on the same album, but within the same song. And three, he amassed an incredibly staggering amount of music in his catalog, some which human ears will never hear because it's all down in this giant, there's 3 vaults underneath the Zappa estate, just full of music that most people are never going to hear. And that's really the reason that I'm getting into this first episode, because there are over 100 Zappa releases that are official that you can buy right now, and that's a pretty daunting number. So what I decided to do is a thing called the Zappa Starter Kit, and this is going to be 6 albums that you can get into Zappa kind of easily without being way too confused about it. Alright, so this is the Zappa Starter Kit, and that starts right now. The first exposure that I had to Zappa was on the Dr. Demento radio show. Now, this was a show that I listened to in the late 70s and early 80s, and it was mostly about novelty music. And Zappa just fit the bill because he has a bunch of songs that could qualify as novelty music. Although the first Zappa song I ever heard from start to finish was Hungry Freak's Daddy, and that's not a novelty song at all, but Dr. Demento played some stuff that wasn't always fun. Then later on in life, I started delivering pizzas, and I met this driver named Jerry, whose name shall remain anonymous because he had to ex-nay out of town under mysterious circumstances. But Jerry had a Zappa collection, and so he lent me some albums that he thought would be really good for me to get into Zappa for the first time. Now, I took a big old brick of Maxell XL2 90-minute cassettes because the 100 minutes bound up and got eaten. And the first side A would be Apostrophe, and the side B would be Overnight Sensation. Now, these 2 albums might as well have been a double album because they were derived from the same recording sessions and released in 1973 and 74. Now, these are probably the first albums that every person listens to when they get into Zappa, because it features the 2 most recognizable Zappa songs, which is Don't Eat the Yellow Snow.
Watch out where the Huskies go, don't you eat that yellow snow. Watch out where the Huskies go, don't you eat that yellow snow.
And Montana.
I might be moving to Montana soon, just to raise me up a crop of dental floss.
These albums are so central to the Zappa universe that Dweezil Zappa even said,
My first recommendation to anybody who hasn't heard Frank's music is listen to Apostrophe and Overnight Sensation, because it has everything you could ever want. It's got the rock, jazz, funk, the attitude, and the humor all at once.
Another big exposure to Zappa was on Saturday Night Live when he performed I Am the Slime.
That's right, folks, don't touch that dial. I am the slime from the radio, moving along on the radio. I am the slime from the radio.
It's me,
radio. That's right, Don.
A couple of standout tracks on these two albums are Dynamo Hum, which is really famous for being infamous. You got the casual and funky Camarillo Brillo. And then you got the title track called Apostrophe, which is an instrumental featuring Jack Bruce playing a fuzzed out bass solo, and it was featured in the opening montage. So on to the next tape and side A, which is going to be Zoot Allures. Now this album is a really good one if you're interested in the Zappa songs that I call the solo vehicles. It may be an instrumental or it may be a regular song with lyrics, but at some point there's a big ass Zappa guitar solo in the middle of it. This album has a couple of those. It's got Black Napkins, it's got Friendly Little Finger, and it's got the title track Zoot Allures itself. Some of the other standout tracks on this album are Wonderful Wino, Disco Boy, and The Torture Never Stops, complete with torture sounds and Zappa playing a fretless guitar. Side B of the tape is going to be Shake Your Booty. Now this album is really fast paced and it's almost like a concept album, but the concept is just whatever the hell comes into Zappa's head at the time. You've got comedy stuff, you got funny voices, you got conversations that are overheard in the control room in between songs. You got a cool song called Flakes about the mechanic industry. You got I'm So Cute about Terry Bozzio, that cute little drummer. And you've also got a cool song called Baby Snakes. Then he gets into the offensive category with Jewish Princess and a song called Broken Hearts Are for Assholes, which features the line,
Don't fool yourself, girl, it's going right out the boot shoe. Don't fool yourself, girl, it's going right out the boot shoe.
You got a couple of good solo vehicles for Zappa on this album, but the one that stands out and endures the longest is City of Tiny Lights. You'll see this song on lots of different live sets.
You can see it anytime when you get the squints. From your downers and your wine, you're so big, it's so tiny. Every cloud is silver liney. The great escape for all of you. Tiny is as tiny do. Tiny is as tiny do.
Going into the next tape now, we are going with You Are What You Is. This album is a lot like Shake Your Booty in that it contains a lot of fast-paced comedy material interspliced with sound effects and funny voices and so forth. There's a couple of standout tracks are Teenage Wind, which is some kid talking about how he wishes he was at the Grateful Dead concert. And Harder Than Your Husband is also a good one, which I heard on Dr. Demento. And then a song about this Halloween groupie called Goblin Girl.
She's a goblin girl. She's a goblin girl. I've been a hobbling cause of the goblin girl.
And if you want to get into the standout track for me on this album, it'd have to be Doreen because of the amazing vocal delivery. Now, the dividing line on this album is the theme from the third movement of the Sinister Footwear. I had to slow down to say that one. From there, it just picks up the pace and just goes into a series of songs that kind of bleed into each other. Songs about suicide, small town politics, drug use, and organized religion and televangelism. Then the album ends with one of the silliest songs I've ever heard from Frank Zappa, and that's really saying something because Zappa wrote some really stupid, silly stuff. But the end of this album is a song called Drafted Again. So my friend Jerry really didn't care too much for the early Mothers, and I'm going to call an audible here and go for side B is going to be an early Mothers album, and it is absolutely free. The thing you need to know about Zappa, Frank Zappa versus Frank Zappa and the Mothers or the Mothers of Invention is that obviously as they progressed, they got more technically advanced and the production values got bigger. And the early Mothers is a little bit more obvious on the social commentary and the humor. And so the first track on this album is a song called Plastic People. And it marks Zappa's career-long fascination with the song Louie Louie. And you hear Zappa, when you hear some of the early demo stuff that Zappa released, you can hear him playing around with the song Louie Louie. But on the second album of the Mothers' career, they start out with a big blatant riff on Louie Louie.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Fellow Americans.
He's been sick. And I think his wife is going to bring him some chicken soup. Plastic people. Oh, baby, not just a drag.
The middle of this album is devoted to fruits and vegetables and goes on for about 16 minutes with Call Any Vegetable, The Duke of Prunes, and Invocation and Ritual of the Young Pumpkin.
A lot of people don't bother about their friends in the vegetable kingdom. They think, what can I say? What can a person like myself say to a vegetable? But the answer is simple, my friends. Just call and tell them how you feel.
This album is also where you can start to see the Mothers of Invention chopping up genres and playing with them and showing absolutely no respect for any kind of ground rules or genre classifications, little boxes. They weren't interested in any of that. And I can imagine that being an early Mothers fan must have been confusing because I would imagine they're thinking, are these guys making fun of these styles of music or are they paying tribute to these styles of music? And I think the answer is both. You know, they started out on the first Mothers album doing stuff that sounded kind of like cover songs, but now they're really playing with everything. And there's a song called America Drinks, which starts out as a really mutated scat jazz number, and then on the very end of the album gets transplanted into a bar and ends up in a bar brawl.
Wanna buy some pencils? How could I be just like the rest?
If you're looking for the standout track on this album, it's going to be Brown Shoes Don't Make It. This song has been mutated several times over Zappa's career. He does it a lot on live sets, and he even included a brand new version on Tinseltown Rebellion, and I'm going to cover that later on in the Zappaphile episodes down the road.
TV dinner by the pool. Got another year of school. Good, okay, he's too weird. Be a plumber, he's a bummer. He's a bummer every summer. Be a loyal plastic robot for a world that doesn't care.
So that's the Zappa starter kit. Now I know that if you're a Zappaphile out there and you're watching this, you're thinking to yourself, that's not the Zappa starter kit. My 6-album list is the Zappa starter kit. And I'd really like to encourage all you Zappaphiles and non-Zappaphiles out there to contribute to this list. Down in the comments, I want you to put your Frank Zappa starter kit. And if you're not a Zappaphile yet, tell me what you thought and whether you liked this or not. Obviously, I'd like for you to like it downstairs there in the like section. So here's what's coming up on the next episode of the Zappa Starter Kit. It's going to be called The Shoebox, and I'm going to chronicle my next giant Zappa growth spurt in the form of a shoebox full of Zappa tapes. I'm the Zappaphile, and this is Rockula Retrospective.
Night on.